other than that's a beautiful baby. Because there is no other right answer to a baby picture. I don't care what you say. Right, Grandpa?
I'm like, that baby looks like an alien.
Oh, no, that one looks like David.
I swear I was not there that day.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax, HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to episode 435 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me is Donna Grindle of Carden. Good afternoon, Donna.
Hello, David. You said 435, and I'm like, wow, it seems like it's been a long time.
Is that all? Just 435? Seems like we've been doing this for years.
It does take a long time to get that many under your belt, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why some of the podcasters started doing like the daily ones. Let's get that number up faster.
No, you don't want to.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about a breach that equals class action lawsuits.
Because that's what they do.
Yep. And this is one of those things I tell people about. Like, I know everybody is afraid of OCR investigations and fines and penalties, but guess what?
That is the least of your concerns.
It is. It's like you're worried about the wrong things, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm glad you're concerned. Just saying, the fallout from other things can be a lot worse. And in this case, well, let's just say we'll get into it. But first, I want to say thanks to those of you who are listening on a weekly basis, who donate and who leave us reviews and who send us candy and goodies from places far and wide. we thank you.
Man.
Yeah, we love you, man. All right. So let's get into some content quickly today because we have a lot. And I know right now, as everybody's listening, maybe the whole OpenAI thing has calmed down some.
Yeah. Whoa.
But as we're recording this, there is a flux.
Yeah. It's interesting to sit back and watch something that is so entwined in where we see the future going, that is in such an uproar in a key position. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So we'll get into, for those of you who listened for a long time, you know that we always go over our annual predictions at the end of the year, which we'll be doing here the next few weeks.
Yeah.
And then we do our predictions for the next year about what's going to be happening in privacy and security. And it's always fun for us to look and see how right we were or how wrong we were.
You never admit to being wrong, though.
That's true. What is the saying? I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken.
The only thing I'm wrong about is once I thought I was wrong.
Yeah. But I have to go back and look, but I don't know that we said anything about AI. Like, that's how fast it exploded on the scene.
Yeah, I think we were tinkering with it and talking about it maybe, but I don't know. I'm now that we both mentioned it in this discussion we were having, now I need to go back and find what we said only because I'm curious, not because we need it in 2 weeks. But
yeah, and to be fair, for those of you who know something about AI, it's been around a long time. So I don't want everybody to think, oh, it's something that just happened.
No.
No, it's been around a long time.
Yes.
And we've been using it a long time. I always tell people, look, if you're using Google Mail or Microsoft Mail, you've been using AI for a while. You just didn't know it.
That's true. It's out there.
Yeah. So you're not going to be able to avoid it. And it's even going to get worse. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. And over the weekend, I played with Midjourney. It was my first time I've been messing with that. And the images it creates are just so lifelike. It's amazing. to
Really?
think that these aren't real people. This is just computer generated. And it looks just like a picture that you took of somebody.
Oh, wow.
And it's crazy because, when DALL-E first came out, you would do it and you could tell like their eyes were all crazy looking, or they would have 6 fingers on one hand or something.
Yeah, it was not quite right. It's like,
Yeah. It's like something's wrong with that person. Now, I will say I did see an image of a lady that had like 3 arms and wasn't supposed to. So, but the images are just crazy how they can do things like that. So it's not going anywhere. But anyway, not part of our show for today. So let's dive into the first thing, which will be getting into our HIPAA briefs.
I'm in the briefs. Got my briefs on today.
Good, because today's HIPAA brief, as usual, sometimes usual, we try to tie the HIPAA brief into the topic for the day. So in today's HIPAA brief, we have a question that was not posed by a listener, which is, there are actually 2 questions. So one is, can a HIPAA-covered healthcare provider allow the media or film crews to film patients in their facilities where PHI will be accessible without the patient's authorization if the patient's faces are blurred and their identities are otherwise masked in the video? That's question 1. And question 2, can a covered health provider ever allow the media to film patients in areas of their facilities where patients' PHI will be accessible?
And so are you answering those, or are you going to have me answer them like you like to?
I can do the short answer.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go with the short answer.
So the question number 1, can you do it if their faces are blurred and otherwise masked? The real answer is no. The Donna answer is it depends. It's a fact-specific determination. So the other question is, can you ever have patients filmed in areas where PHI is accessible? The answer is yes. The Donna answer is it depends.
Yeah. No, unless is what you're. Yeah, except.
There you go. There you go.
That's why it's a fact-specific determination.
It always is. So it can never be easy enough just to give a one-word answer.
No, it can't be. That's what's so hard is people want to ask me, has this changed? Maybe.
Well, you would think maybe that, okay, if I'm blurring everything out and there's no way possible they're going to know who it is, like I've quote unquote de-identified them on video, right? That should be okay. And then guess what? The answer is no, not really.
Well, it start with the statement, there's no way possible they would know who it is. I mean, how do you know there's no way possible?
Yeah, because there are people that I could see just their silhouette and tell you exactly who they are.
Yeah. And I know it's the doctor's office in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and that looks just like so-and-so that does live there, and I bet that's them.
Mm-hmm.
That's close enough.
Yep.
At least according to most people. And here's the thing is that's really not the place for filming and reporting. That's the place for, doctor-patient confidentiality.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't know, Grey's Anatomy is not in a real hospital.
No. And nor are the patients real.
And yet they still violate HIPAA fairly frequently. I had to stop watching that show.
There's so many reasons I can't watch things. Ridiculous plots and all of that kind of stuff is like torture as well. But every time, it's like me being at a hospital or a medical facility. I actually go out of my way to compliment the people if I don't see problems.
Mm-hmm.
I don't say much if I see them unless there's a big concern. Like, hey, does anybody know your server room's open?
He just put your hand up to your ear like, call me.
That's my thing. If we're at my client side, I like to go in and leave a business card if I'm somewhere I'm not supposed to be by myself.
Yeah. You should get a business card that says, I should not have been able to get here. And stick it.
But back to the topic at hand. This has come up before. You know, we did the ER reality show, and everybody kept thinking that, you know, we've got it covered. And I've seen discussions from the folks that were there saying, you know, we really thought that we had it covered. But in that case, and I'm not certain 100% on the details, but there was a New York hospital that was involved in that, and they had a resolution agreement as well, because a family is watching it and they realize what they're seeing is their loved one who passes away.
Mhm.
And you really only saw the bottom of their feet. But if you're looking at somebody from that perspective, even with it blurred, they knew who it was because they knew where it was. And it's just not something you want to see on TV and know that, you know, everybody else is watching it too.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, highly recommend you don't do that. In fact, one of the things that we spend a lot of time talking with folks about, particularly like an OBGYN, because you got all the babies and everybody's excited to see pictures of the babies.
Yeah, or dentist offices. Oh,
A dentist I went to a long time ago, people would they would go all over the world and take pictures like they were flossing, and she had them all over her office, and it was great. But the people gave it to her, so it's on them, right? But it's not the same if I'm filming you having treatment or somebody's discussing the information, or it could be on the screen or any number of things. It is important to know that even in the cases where people are like, I just want to post the baby picture, fine, but we're not going to respond to it. We're not going to say anything other than that's a beautiful baby. Because there is no other right answer to a baby picture. I don't care what you say. Right, Grandpa?
I'm like, that baby looks like an alien.
Oh, no, that one looks like David.
I swear I was not there that day.
Yes, but your boys, they having babies.
Yeah, we won't go there.
But the bigger issue here is taking the time to realize that patient privacy should come first before an interview or a discussion with a reporter or filming anything. You cannot assume it is okay. Period. End of topic.
Yep. So what should we do so that assumptions aren't happening?
Well, first of all, just start with, if somebody wants to let a reporter in or film something or any of that kind of stuff, first question is this absolutely necessary? Because if it's not, we're not doing it. Start there. And then if it is absolutely necessary, then you have to sit down and narrow the access to only the areas, and you've got to think through every single thing that could be overheard or seen. And do not assume that you need to get a sign off from everybody that could be within view or within ear,
or might be in view.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. The whole HIPAA authorizations, or as the OCR likes to say, a proper HIPAA authorization.
Yeah,
you definitely want to get those so that people understand what they're waiving. And I would also make it specific to that event. It doesn't give you the ability to do it all the time and violate HIPAA everywhere else. It's, be very specific about what it's for.
Yeah, they did make a point of putting in the law that you can't have somebody sign away their rights to make it easy. At the beginning of HIPAA, everybody's just, I'll just have people sign that they don't care. I
still have people say that.
I'm like, yeah, can't do that. But our brief is not very brief today, but the net of it is don't do it unless you absolutely have to. And if you absolutely have to, you better really think long and hard about what you're doing.
All right. Let's get into the HIPAA say what?
Yeah, what?
Maybe you can make this one brief.
So that comes up because today there was a resolution agreement announced from the HHS Office for Civil Rights, and OCR said, "Hey, we saw you on TV." And this gets back to us saying, don't assume that somebody has to file a complaint, or if you make the news, the people that work at OCR watch the news too.
They're everywhere.
Right. So St. Joseph's Medical Center in New York, Yonkers, I think it said, provided a national media outlet access to COVID-19 patients' protected health information. The bottom line is, the moral of this story is, don't talk to reporters and have video of your patients while you're talking to the reporters. No, you shouldn't be discussing those things, but they have, it's not a tiny place. They've stroked a check for $80,000, and they're on a corrective action plan, which means they're being monitored and having to report and make sure. But it all happened because the Associated Press published an article with pictures and information about the patients who had COVID-19. And this happened in April 2020, when we knew even less about it than we know today.
Mm-hmm. So, I wonder if somebody looked at it and said, well, they've waived HIPAA for COVID-19, so we can do whatever we want to. I'm just wondering, because some people see those waivers and they think they can do whatever they want to do.
I remember back then when we went through it, where the mailman wasn't going to drop off mail at somebody's house because they had COVID, because somebody at the doctor's office told somebody at the sheriff's office, who then told the postman. I'm like, what? And now I'm not going to give you your mail in your mailbox that's all the way down at the bottom of the hill from your house. I mean, we have to know that happened there. But we do have a quote, the obligatory quote, to get our attention. You got it, David?
Yep. So from the OCR director, she says, when receiving medical care in hospitals and emergency rooms, patients should not have to worry that providers may disclose their healthcare information to media without their authorization. Providers must be vigilant about patient privacy and take necessary steps to protect it and follow the law. OCR will continue to take enforcement actions that puts patient privacy first.
There you go. So they said that there were actually 3 patients that they told the reporter things like the patient's COVID-19 diagnoses, current medical status, medical prognosis, their vital signs, and their treatment plans. Wait, what? So, 3. Did I put up 3 fingers? Okay. Anyway, they may not use or disclose protected health information except either as the privacy rule permits or requires, or if the individual or their personal representative has authorized it in writing. Period. End of story. Except in some cases. So, so just don't talk to the media. It's never good. Even if they're reporting about you and your patients, it's not going to go well for you. It's really not.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Yeah. Talk to Donna first before you talk to the media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Give me a holler.
Yeah. All right. That leads us to our 405D tip of the week, which will be quick.
Yeah.
So they released a couple of different PDFs last week, and it's talking about the role that we all play in cybersecurity. And there's 2 new posters that highlight the importance to everyone in the organization so they can understand their part, keeping patient safety in mind from cyber threats. And so I encourage everybody, go to our website, look at the show notes for this episode, and download those 2 pieces of material. There's one for IT staff, and there's also one for medical staff. So you can get both of those. And it's a cyber hygiene poster.
Well, actually, it's practice administrators and IT professionals and the other is the clinician folks. So, but I love that the approach is cyber care is patient care on the medical practitioner one, and the other one, cyber care is total care. So we are all members of the cybersecurity team. I was at that conference a couple of weeks ago, and I kept saying, now, the number one thing I would like for everybody to know is you're all members of the cybersecurity team. And the look on people's faces, what? No, I'm not.
I didn't sign up for this.
I'm into that. Okay.
All right, let's get into the juicy stuff. A breach equals a class action lawsuits.
Yeah, the big ones, you might as well just get used to it. The section in this one of the articles that I was referencing, it's like it literally says race to the courthouse is one of the sections talking about the lawsuits. So, but this one's big. It's big, and it's a business associate. So,
dun dun dun.
well, business associates are getting a lot of heat because all the big ones, virtually every one of the big ones now, is tracing back to a business associate at some level. So this one is PJ&A, which I see B&J every time I look at it.
PB&J.
Perry Johnson and Associates. They are a transcription service provider. And, business associates provide a service. Let's keep that in mind. You use them because you need them. But they're in Nevada. I think that's the proper way. There's Nevada and Colorado. Nevada and Colorado. Anyway, they announced a major breach. And first they came out and said November 3rd that it looked like it was 8.95 million patients.
Ooh, Lord.
8.95. Now that number seems to be closer to 90 million. So,
90 million?
9 million, sorry. 50K additional patients. 9 million total. That's enough to make you drive off the road. 90 million. That's more.
I was like, how did it go from 8.9 to 90?
It's because I was reading. But, it went, the thing that's to me is like, oh, well, first it's 8,950,000. Oh, now it's only not, it's only gone up to 9 million. And
who cares?
It's 50,000. And attorney said to someone that we were working with, oh, this is a little breach. It's only 20,000 patients. And I'm like, are you one of the 20,000 patients? It does matter to them.
That's right.
That's not just a number. That's people.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get people to recognize that you're not just playing with zeros and ones if you're a developer or a vendor of some sort in the technology part, or like their case, you're an attorney because you're just doing this work. You're not seeing 50,000 people standing at your door. But that's really what's happening in a virtual world. And I think we need to do more to illustrate to people when they have that attitude. It was just like, I was stunned with the attitude of 20,000 patients. It's just a little breach.
Well, it's, like I always say, there's the big things in life and little things in life. And when something's going bad, and the only difference between the two is it's big when it has to do with me, and it's little when it has to do with somebody else. So if it had been a 20,000 person data breach and that lawyer was part of that 20,000, it'd be a big deal.
Yeah. It's interesting. Just, it's like a George Carlin thing, who said, why is your stuff, but everybody else's stuff is sugar honey iced tea? We don't want to mess up and it's true.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you a lot of George Carlin lines, but the issue here is just so many, and we already have had so many. But they didn't offer a lot of specifics. They did publish their announcement, if you will, their cyber incident notice. I thought that was an interesting way to put it. They tell us, and just tell me your thoughts when you hear this part, David. An unauthorized party gained access to the PG&A, and I did concentrate, network between
PJ&A.
PJ. All right, between March 27th and May 2nd, 2023. Now, it doesn't say when they discovered it, but I'm going to say 2nd.
But we're just finding out about it, right?
Yes. During the time that the unauthorized party was there, they acquired copies of certain files, which makes me ask a lot of questions. We retained a cybersecurity vendor to assist with the investigation, contain the threat, and further secure our systems. We also directed its vendor, which I'm not sure about that, to review the affected files and determine their precise content. Importantly, this incident did not involve access to any systems or networks of PG&A's healthcare customers. So that last sentence is the most valuable one to all the covered entities.
You keep saying PG&A.
PJ&A. I can't help it. PJ.
It's PJ. Come on now. You had plenty of PJ in college, I'm sure.
Okay. So, there you go.
All right. Yeah. So, all right. So, number one, somebody was sitting in their systems for 6 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. And we're just now finding out about it in November.
Well, they did say that beginning on or about, I always love that, September 29th, PJ&A provided the results of its review to its affected customers. Now, if I was a customer and they didn't tell me before September, but we don't know that, so we're going to let that go.
But it also sounds like maybe they had an IT firm that came in and did some initial work, and then that IT person brought in forensics and stuff, which happens often. That's not a big deal, but that's kind of what it sounds like when they said that it says we also directed its vendor.
Yeah.
Which I'm assuming is the IT. Maybe that it's is supposed to be IT, not it. But anyway, it's vendor to review the affected files.
Well, because there's companies that can take that data, big piles of data, and just kind of pull out the content so you can identify the patients.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a big problem, and this is one that I've discussed with the attorneys and even some of the OCR folks, where I'm supposed to notify the patients within 60 days. It takes longer than 60 days to figure out who the patients are in some of these data breaches.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like I can't do it within 60 days because I don't know who it is. Their response is a bit more troublesome. They're like, if you don't know who it is, then notify them all. And I'm like, I'm going to tell them their data might have been there. And so, there's really no good solution to this, that you've got the time frames, and I get it. I get why we want the time frames, because stuff could be going on. And you want to be aware and be looking for it and take action should you need it. But on the flip side of that, I don't want to know if maybe my data was breached. I want to know if my data was breached. And if it was, I want to know what was involved. Well, if I can't find that out for weeks on end, and I've gone through it multiple times, it's super expensive to do it that way, to have it done electronically with the directed its vendor. Must have been one of those. We're going to assume that here. Mm-hmm. It's super expensive to have them extract that out of here. We know they got to all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just imagine the cost of notifications and all that. If you got, let's just say you've got 1 million patients that it actually affected, but you got a database of 3 million. I mean, that's triple the cost.
Yeah. So there's a lot to it there, and it's just a built-in problem. For me, I see it more as you should announce that there's been an incident and you believe data has been breached within 60 days or as soon as possible, that part. And say, we are working to identify the exact individuals and the data involved, and then I have longer to get that data out. So I'm still aware that my data could be involved, but I haven't been told I'm the one. Now I'm still going to have, until you've been in the office where one of these things has taken place, and the day the letters go out, the next week is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't call anybody because I know there ain't no sense.
I mean, I'm at the point now where should we just walk around with the assumption that all of our data is breached? Not saying that it is or that it will be. I'm almost to the point where should we just assume that everything we do is going to be breached? And I say that to say, not that we throw up our hands and say we don't do anything about it. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, from the standpoint of a patient, I need to be hyper aware that everything I've done everywhere is being looked at by somebody that I don't want to look at it and could be used against me. So that I've got my guard up all the time, not assuming that, well, my data is safe. Instead, let me just assume it's not. And move forward with my life in that manner. So that
the problem with that is healthcare.
Yeah.
So you're moving forward with that assumption. Now I'm not going to tell the doctor something that I don't want in my records.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So now I'm not going to tell them, and I'm not going to get appropriate care. And then it's going to be blamed, down the line that this is going to create huge problems. Yeah. And this has been my concern for years.
Yeah, because now the integrity of the data is not there, and it's not even a digital problem.
Right. So I can't treat patients, and, it's different if, there are people, or I just don't want to talk about it. You have people that do that. I didn't tell the doctor. I didn't want to talk about it. You hear that, in conversation. That's different than I'm afraid to tell you because I can't trust you with my data.
Yeah.
Very different. And that there is where it get, because, you and I both know data's out there everywhere. But how much of my medical health is out there everywhere?
Yeah. I mean, it's good to know those things. Like I said, I'm not saying that from a standpoint, because I want to reiterate this. I'm not saying that from the standpoint of, well, I shouldn't take any precautionary measures because it's going to get breached anyway. That is not what I'm saying.
No. No, but you got to be on the flip side. Yes, I agree. We should just assume the data's out there. But the question is, how much of my healthcare data is actually out there? Mm-hmm. And that is where the line is drawn, because so much of the data is, a website got it. So my email, my phone number, my address, a litany of things is out there. I get that. But what about those? That's the issue with healthcare. Is if I tell people you should assume that and go about that accordingly, how many people are going to say, well, I can't tell them because it'll go on the record? So that is the quandary, is it not?
It is. So moving on to this part where you talked about, though, the race to the courthouse.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the article, they had a whole section that, at the time the article was written, there were already 6 proposed class action lawsuits filed. And 4 of them had to do with just the one big health system, Northwell Health, which is the largest healthcare system in New York State, where nobody lives. So 3.9 million of them belong to them. Chicago's Cook County Health System says 1.2 million belong to them. So you got to wonder who the others are. But it's still not even with that, it's not the biggest breach this year.
Yeah. The other part too is you got to think about the state laws and the state attorneys general stepping in and doing things.
Yeah.
Especially New York.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, golly, that's when people, when they say to me stuff like, well, do I really need all this security? I can't really afford to pay an extra few $100s a month, which, means I want to be able to buy a new car every year. But anyway, it's like, do you not understand how costly it's going to be if you don't have this security in place? Not saying that you won't have a breach if you have all the security, because nothing's 100%, right?
Right.
But what I am saying is you aren't even in a defensible position when these class action lawsuits come raining down on your head.
Yeah, and here's what is, they included a quote in the complaint filed in New York. And here's what you have to contend with. Northwell's and PJ&A's negligent conduct is ongoing in that they and their third-party vendors still hold the personally identifiable information of the plaintiff and class members in an unsafe and unsecure manner.
Wow.
So that's what they're, it's like, if you can't, this is why we tell people, you need to be able to prove you were trying.
Yeah. Don't be negligent.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can move you from that paradigm of negligence into something else, then you're better off. Even if the breach happens, you're far better off.
Yeah. It's going to happen, so I'm just not even going to worry about it. That's like, my car's going to get stolen, so I just leave the keys in it, Yeah. I mean,
yeah. Those are the folks that call you on a Friday afternoon in a panic, want to know what you can do for them.
Yeah.
Nothing. The answer is nothing.
Yeah. I charge more for these. You know that, right? And I'm not a fan of if you're trying and then you have to contend with these lawsuits. But again, I can fight off the lawsuits if I can quickly produce documentation to show that we were doing what is reasonable and appropriate. And I could make that argument.
So key word there, folks, prove.
Yeah. That, and so often clients will ask me, how do you decide when you're recommending something to somebody? And I'm like, I take them through it. And if I can make the argument and be willing to testify that I believe that what you're proving you are doing is reasonable and appropriate for your environment. If I feel like you've got the proof and you were doing it and consistently staying on top of it, and I could testify to that, then I believe, that's as good as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
So you're never going to stop it.
I mean, because we talk about this all the time in the boot camps that we do, which, by the way, have one coming up in Q1.
Yeah. Is it Q1 or Q2? End of Q1, beginning of Q2. We don't know. We haven't told the dates yet.
We're not ready for that. Sorry.
Never mind.
But we always talk about how we're not trying to get everybody's privacy and security program to be 100%, because it's just not going to happen.
No.
But we've got to get you to an acceptable level, and that is a defined state. It's not like we're sticking our finger up in the air and let the wind blow on it and go, that feels good. Yeah. No, there's things we can point to say, this is where you need to be, and this is where you are based on these criteria, and this is where we need to get you to. And so we're not trying to, for everybody who's like, well, there's no way I'm going to prevent everything. No, you're not. There's no way I'm going to be able to afford to buy all the protections. No, you're not. But we've got to get you to this point where we can defend you.
Yep, and that is the key element when these lawsuits are coming. And I just had I was interviewed for another podcast last week, and they specifically asked, what is it that is it just having a BAA? Is that enough? Okay,
it's enough to get you in trouble.
Well, technically, that's what the law requires, is you have a BAA and it has certain elements in it. And if you have that, you're not violating the law. Are you protecting your business and your patients? Probably not, if that's all you have. But that was part of the discussion. Is it gets back to, is my goal compliance with the law, or is my goal to protect privacy and security?
Yep.
And just signing a BAA, you meet that requirement as long as it has those elements, and most of the templates, they do. But when you look at those requirements, and this is something that we have been, I put a ton of stuff in our BAA on purpose, because it's more of a, let me see if the client notices how many things I have put in there that I'm saying I'm not responsible for. Right. And or downstream, they're like, we can't sign this. Well, I'm glad you read it, because the people that just sign it, but that
reminds me of a conversation I had where a healthcare consultant was working with a client, and he sends me a BAA, and at the bottom it's like templated by whatever. It's got their information on it. Anyway, I kicked it back to the guy, and I was like, I'm not signing this. And I told him why. It had something to do with the notification time frame on it and all that. And he's like, okay, well then where do we go from here? I'm like, we have a discussion about what we're going to decide on.
It's a contract.
I mean, he was like, well, I don't know what to do. Nobody's ever told me they weren't going to sign it.
Yeah, it's a new world out there, isn't it?
It was hilarious.
Yeah, this is just that stunned moment. Because, what am I going to do then? I mean, are we done? But in the article, and this was in Data Breach Today, I think is where data breach, I want to make sure, databreachtoday.com is where I got these articles, because they had good stuff in them, so I picked those to kind of be our thing. But there is a reason that we talk about how, last week we just talked about the ransomware threats all jacked up, and they're coming at you. And now we add to that the big breaches and a vast number of the breaches reported so far in 2023 are BA breaches.
Yeah.
But guess whose name is on all that data? It's the covered entities.
Mm-hmm.
So that alone, and you're going to hear about it. And people just, that was part of my answer is, you have to remember, you may have met that compliance obligation with the law, but your name's going to be the one that, I had them sign a contract. Do you think how's that going to go on your reputation improvement and dealing with all that? Because it is crazy, because it's on social media. It's patients in your face, patients on your phone. It's everywhere when this stuff hits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not my fault.
Yeah. Let me just give you this other phone number. They don't care. They know you gave them the data. So, it's you're going to have reporters at your door, and now we brought it back around to the reporters. It's either way, you don't want them. You don't want to give them stuff, and you don't want them showing up.
Yeah, and you certainly don't want to be the one that pushed for that business associate's business.
No, you don't want to be. Hey, it's a friend of mine. But then the other piece of it is, and in the discussion on the Cook County part of this notification, the article was talking about, oh, well, we're going to get rid of them. Everybody wants to know you fired that vendor.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. But that's not like inky dinky do, triple thrasher to you, and you're out. It's not that easy. And in that article, I really liked what Mike Hamilton, CISO and co-founder of Critical Insight, was quoted in this article. It would also depend on having an alternative for the provision of the service. And in this particular case, they were talking about medical transcription, but again, they're providing a service that you need.
Right.
That's why. So it's not like I can just say, okay, well, we're going to bring this in-house. Who's going to do it? So it's not that easy. And then he makes a point. He said business associates that process PHI should be contractually managed in accordance with the risk of unauthorized disclosure. Look at there. Actually evaluating the risk of this vendor and how much they could really have in an unauthorized disclosure. And he says this should include terms that specify that a records breach or network compromise originating with the business associate constitutes grounds for contract termination, including language regarding the return or destruction of records in scope. Now, all of them should have that return or destruction in there regardless, but this issue about a data breach or network compromise, you failed to hold up your end of the bargain of protecting the data. But that's where you got to notify the vendor, make sure the records are handled properly. What data are you how are you going to make sure that they got rid of it? We had a business that everybody was closed. They're closing down this, everybody retired. They sold off a big chunk, but they still had patient data. And they're like, what do we do? I'm like, well, you go through this process, you document all that, and then you send a letter to all of your clients. This is what we did to get rid of your data. And documentation is essential for legal and regulatory purposes. I loved that. So totally agree with what he's saying there. We should get together and have some bourbon. But that's why, you need to change the way you've thought about managing your vendors. I know you do. You look at it differently now than you did even 2 or 3 years ago, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's a pain. If vendors want to know why, when they send me this thing like, are you interested in our such and such solution? I'm like, no.
No,
I don't have time to vet you. It's not just a matter of me going, oh, this looks great, sign me up. No, there's a lot of work to be done. And so there's a big cost in switching vendors. And if you do it right, let me say it that way. Yeah. If you do it right.
Yeah, because you definitely don't want to just run to whoever's got a good deal for you to move now. You don't want that.
Especially in this space. And it's, I'm so paranoid, rightfully so, about the solutions we have because there's so much integration across platforms. Sometimes you don't even know the integration's there. You've got these companies that are getting gobbled up by, basically 2 major technology vendors, which scares me to death because anytime you're gobbling up other companies, you're bringing in a massive issue that could be hiding in the closet. And then on top of all that, you've got the remote access that everything seems to have, even when you don't want it to. So I'm like, no, I am not interested in vetting your solution.
Yeah, and that gobbling up thing is, we're just going to merge the data. Well, we'll just take this app and we'll put it over. Immediately, you're opening up a can of worms.
Yeah, it's all the time. Like I just got an email last week that the vendor that we have a SOC vendor that we use to manage and monitor and respond to one of our anti-malware EDR platforms.
So that's not a sock that keeps your feet warm.
No.
Just clarifying.
Just clarifying. A security operations center. Because we don't just layer security from a technology standpoint, we also layer it from a people standpoint. So anyway, we have that, and we get a letter from them or an email from them that said that SonicWall bought them out. And I'm like, dang it. It's like, really? Because now they're a different vendor. So now we've got to go back and start all over again. Even though we didn't do anything, now we've got all this work that got thrown in our lap because now we've got a different vendor that we're having to deal with because they got acquired.
Yeah, and while we don't know what happened with the PJ&A, it could be It took everything I had. It could be something like that happened with one of their vendors. We don't know. More than likely, it's one of their vendors were involved based on somebody got in. And either you have in-house IT and you're accepting all that responsibility, which very few people do. And if they've got that much data, I can't imagine everything's in-house. But it could be. We don't know. They haven't let us know. But those vendors that are further down the chain, they get to hide. They don't become that. The covered entities are the ones that are remembered.
Yep, that's true. So we'll leave you with that.
Mm-hmm.
Did you mention HCSCRM before we move on?
Well, I mean, when you're doing your contracts, you should also be vetting. And HCSCRM is one of the ways we recommend doing it. But now there's tons of vendors out there. For the bigger organizations, there's tons of vendors out there now. Ed even has one that's on the 405D that their tool is all about managing vendor vetting. And and so it does crack me up, though, that 5 or 6 years ago when I was vetting vendors and they were literally yelling at me, 4 or 5 people on a phone call in a conference room yelling at me. And I'm like, I'm not telling you anything other than based on your answers, I'm going to tell my client that I don't think you're a good choice. That's it. Yelling at me does nothing.
It just, reinforces my decision.
Yeah. I mean, all I'm saying is you can't prove you're doing any of this. And if you can't prove you're doing any of it and you don't even know what some of it is, I'm going to say that's not a good idea. You can do whatever you want. I don't care. My client may decide they're going to do business with you anyway. Stop yelling at me. You know what? I bet those guys now are able to go, boom, boom, boom. Here's all those answers. So you're welcome.
So, yep. You were doing it before it was cool.
That's always my problem.
You're a trendsetter. You're ahead of your time.
Yeah, we'll call it that.
All right, folks, that is our show for today. Thanks for listening. Be sure to share this episode out and follow us on any kind of social media sites you can find us on. Thanks for listening. And remember, for Donna and myself, that HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.